Okay, we might get started, everyone. And Sarah, if I could just get you to shut down that slide. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to week 5 of the Foundation series. I feel like we're really in the swing of things now, and it's really fantastic having you guys along. I've been receiving really interesting emails and feedback throughout the past 4 weeks. And look, as always, I know I bang on about surveys, but we really appreciate it. You are helping us shape what this course can be in real time. And as you will have seen from the email that I sent out this morning, the feedback that I get from you guys influences, some of the actions that we're taking. So sending out Jeremy Jenkinson's deck from last week and setting the following week 7 of the Foundation series, so the unofficial follow-up to JJ's session, which hopefully some of you have seen today. I'd like to begin the session, as always, today by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and really paying respect to the traditional custodians of the land on which we are hosting this webinar today. And yeah, just once again, really thrilled to have everyone here. It's been, we're sort of on the downhill slant and really appreciate that this is quite a commitment from everyone, but hopefully it's been really expanding your mind and giving you the opportunity to be exposed to some different types of interesting leaders and influencers, I should say, within our industry. But I would like to now introduce our speaker for week 5. So our speaker today, I'm really excited to introduce you to. It's someone I've only recently had the chance to meet, but someone who is passionate about innovation and using technology creatively. And I must say that passion and that enthusiasm is really infectious. I got excited speaking to him just about the sort of subject matter of today's talk. So Ciaran is the Executive Technical Director of RGA Australia. He hasn't been there for too long. He joined towards the end of last year, and prior to that was also at another of our member agencies, Analog Folk. And both agencies, for those that don't know, are really digitally led agencies. So, we've got someone here today who's very much an expert in that area. As I said, he's passionate about innovation and using technology creatively, also passionate about working with young people and really sharing his expertise in the industry. And previously has worked with clients, or RGA continues to work with clients such as Google, Nike, ANZ, Samsung, Telstra and more. Over the years, Ciaran has blended tech and creativity in some really extraordinary and award-winning ways for clients, and continues to do the same at a time when I think clients are probably depending on digital technology and innovation more than ever. So without further ado, I would really like to hand you over to today's wonderful speaker, the Executive Technical Director of RGA here in Sydney, although I believe he supervises or oversees Melbourne as well, Ciaran Park. Thank you, Ciaran. Take it away.
Hi, thanks for Prue. Hello everybody, thank you for giving me the opportunity first of all to Prue and Sarah to present. Hopefully the content that I'm going to show you today you're going to find engaging and also going to maybe inspire some new thoughts and thinking, especially when it comes to technology. So I'm just going to quickly jump into my deck, bear with me. Cool. Okay, great. Yeah, again, thank you very much, Prue and Sarah, and to everybody who's come along today, first for the opportunity to present to you all. I'm going to do a quick blurb about myself. Prue's already done a pretty awesome job, so I won't spend too much time on that, and also a little insight into RGA and what we do, but only a couple of slides, and then we'll get straight into the actual content of the presentation. So, hello. First of all, a little bit about us. Obviously, my name's Ciaran, so I work for RGA. I'm the Executive Technical Director here. RGA is relatively new to me in terms of working. I've known them for many, many years, but I recently joined them just before Christmas. Before that, I started working at Analog Folk in Australia, first of all. Working with technology in really innovative ways, really cool, kind of creative ways as well, blending technology and creative together. I've been doing that for the past decade with brands, ultimately exploring new technology and seeing how it can push the customer experience to the kind of the next level. I also originally started out as creative many, many years ago. I didn't start out as technical. My kind of creative aspirations led me to do more technology and understand code and stuff so I could pair the two together. Experience-wise, I kind of work across many different platforms, from software to physical to more enterprise solutions in terms of kind of deployments and big builds and things. So less about me, more about RGA. For those of you who don't know, RGA are relatively large, big network of offices around the world, spanning more immediately Sydney and Melbourne, but then into APAC with kind of Tokyo and Singapore and Shanghai, but then across the whole world with our head office being in New York. And we pride ourselves on really being collaborative. We share work, ideas, as well as ambition and kind of aspirations. So we're always communicating, always sharing learnings and knowledge between the offices. Reinvention is in our DNA. You may not know that RGA were actually breaking the rule book since 1977. We kind of started out doing digital with computer-assisted filmmaking, creating the credits for Superman and Alien. So this is stuff that we've been doing a very long time. And what we ultimately try and do is we create positive change for people and brands. We've been trying to do it from day one as well. And we always try to look at what's happening around us and respond to those changes, but also trying to create those changes as well. Some of the stuff that we have done, quick snapshot, something that is quite prevalent today is National Geographic. We worked with them to build a new platform to incubate brand new ideas about tackling environmental waste, particularly around plastic. We also made Hearts Race with Toyota, so one of our clients. We actually created a limited access showroom reserved for the most passionate fans online, where there was only 15 minutes that they could actually buy a new car, the new, brand new kind of sports Supra. We actually sold out of the cars in 22 minutes. That's about 15 millions worth of dollars. And we've changed kind of the way search works for Google. We created a platform called Signature Search, whereby we really unearthed what people were searching for and displayed that to users. And some of our clients, as Prue already mentioned, we're working with Toyota, Google, AACO, Nike, and so on and so forth. But without further ado, the actual interesting content which I want to speak to you today about is 5 technologies ultimately you should be talking to clients about, clients and brands and people who are looking to kind of change their customer experience and the way they do things. That was the original kind of presentation category or title, but I've recently changed this. This will be a surprise to Prue and Sarah as well. I thought it'd be nicer to, rather than to deep dive into technology and the tech platforms, which can be a little bit kind of intensive and dry, I thought I'd rather talk about technology categories and the technologies behind those that can really help customer experience. So it'll be a little bit easier to kind of digest. It'll be mapped against a journey. So these are the categories I'm going to be showing you today. The first one is around content and what we do with the content that we kind of surface, find, and also ultimately deliver to consumers. The second one is social. So that's about how we use social platforms, not just through general campaign work, but the new features that social platforms are providing and interesting ways that we can get consumers to actually complete purchases through social. Taking that to online, so what happens with your online mediums, with websites and such, and then into the in-store experience, where people ultimately make a lot of their decision around purchases in the in-store experience, and then finally at home, what's happening in people's homes with voice and connected devices. So I wanted to give you an idea of the continued experience through that. I would say under each category there are technologies, but they're not mutually exclusive to each category. Some of the technologies I'm going to show you can actually be used in the other sections. So section 1, content. They say content is king, and I would tend to agree. Content is very important. We need to make sure we're delivering the right content to our users via our brands. And a lot of the time it's kind of paired with the word dynamic content, which is any kind of digital content or online content, which changes based on kind of behaviors or data that we have about a consumer, typically text, audio, or video format. But there's a problem with the current content is it doesn't have much context. So there's a disconnect, and ultimately context will always allow brands to deliver better content. If we know what the context is about what people are doing, thinking, feeling, we can deliver content which is tailored around that, as opposed to just based on demographics or just kind of age brackets and things like that. So we really need to understand better about what people are actually saying, because currently we do kind of find out about what kind of content we should be surfacing by a few tools. For example, you'll know this kind of graph probably quite well, in that we reach out to consumers through email and text display ads, but it's generally very small changes like names or dates and chunks of content. And we engage and we have conversations with consumers, but it's not generally that contextual. It's very static. It's basic engagement, I'd say. So how ultimately can we discover more about what people are thinking? Are people, for example, reacting positively or negatively to your brand? Are they a part of your target audience? Or how should your brand weigh in on topics that people are talking about if that conversation is happening? And there's a way we can do that using AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And part of it is called natural language processing. So it's taking the natural language and understanding it so we can derive context from it. There's loads in natural language processing. Don't feel overwhelmed by this list. There's lots of different parts. There's loads of different things that you can do to understand what people are saying and talking about. I'm just going to be focusing on two today, which I think are really easy to kind of start looking at for brands and clients. The first one's called sentiment analysis, and that's understanding the semantics of text, looking at written word, written copy, and really understanding the emotion behind it. And the second part is going to be auto-summarization. This is more about taking that text and breaking it down into summaries or snippets. So ultimately the way it works is we would take a human input, text, tweet, feed, email, conversation, anything at all, and we pass it through these two natural language processing layers to create output which suddenly has context around it, or sentiment. And it's also more structured. It's not just one sentence, it's got a lot more information around it.
Ciaran, can I just jump in for a second? Can you give us a really basic example of how this might work in real life? Like, so a client wants to find out X, you're going to run the NLP through Y to find out Z. Is there an example you can give here?
I can, yeah, good question. I've got this, hopefully this slide answers that one.
Yeah.
So for example, sentiment analysis, we can use it a lot to understand what people are saying on social networks. So if we were to take a tweet, this is a tweet I actually grabbed just yesterday from a friend of mine, that he's talking about government and very kind of political, current issues with social distancing. Now, normally you can't really tell much about that when it is just kind of displayed or passed through a system, but there's a lot of emotion and sentiment there. So you can use sentiment analysis, and I'll give you an example of a tool that you can use to try it, to run that text and understand the topics and the feeling. So here, for example, he's talking about a very political statement. He's mentioned government. He's also talking about health in social distancing. He's talking about, we've actually detected that he's frustrated because he's still talking about easing lockdown. He's also citing, feels like he doesn't have trust in the topic. So he's saying, so far detached and I don't care anymore, or the public don't care anymore. So we've immediately taken a tweet and found out what it actually means from a sentiment point of view. And you can try this out for yourself. So IBM have their own platform called Watson, and an application called Tone Analyzer. And you can put any piece of text in it and it will figure out what the sentiment is. So to give you a good example, to answer Prue's question, you can find out a lot about what your brand's consumers are saying and feeling through Twitter, for example, just running sentiment analysis over the top. You can understand if people are frustrated with your brand, have got a really overall huge loyalty following with your brand, super engaging, all sorts of things.
So guys, just to jump in, anyone who didn't take a note there, I would be taking a note of this IBM Watson tone analyzer, and go and speak to your group account director about, you know, go and track the social media conversations around your brand and pull together a tone analysis or a sentiment analysis about what's going on. This is exciting stuff. Let's keep going.
Cool. And the next one I wanted to talk about was text summarization. So sentiment analysis is all about tracking sentiment. Text summarization is taking that content and turning it into something you can use elsewhere. So it's more about, for example, taking an article, running it through what we call extraction-based summarization and turning it into a news snippet. And that's an automated process. Before, that would have been a manual process. Someone would have to go through that article and rewrite it as a summary. Natural language processing can automate that for you. And then another level of that is maybe using what we call abstraction-based summarization, which is turning it into a smaller abstract. So something that you could use to share via social. So immediately you've written an article, and now you can use natural language processing to automate all the creation of the other pieces of content that you'd use to share the article through, so social or news publications. This is a huge saving for kind of brands. They no longer have to pay for that extra resource to do all that manual work. It can be automated. And again, another platform that you can trial that right now on is called Resumer. You can chuck a bit of text in and it will generate that outcome for you. But the big takeaways for this is the automation side. So what that kind of gives us is, from human input, running it through those two basic natural language processes, we suddenly have output that has content, context and sentiment and structured data. Where can we take it from there? Well, we can start actually generate new content which is contextually aware. And this is the really exciting stuff. So a guy called Ciaran, who is a French-American computer scientist who won a Turing Award in computer machinery, quoted a little while ago that the most interesting idea in the last 10 years of machine learning was generated content, not dynamic, but content that's actually generated from context. I'll give you an example. So you've all heard of the word machine learning. Part of machine learning is generative adversarial networks. The simple kind of way of explaining that is these networks can generate brand new things from a whole heap of data that they learn from themselves. So if you look at the imagery on the screen I'm showing you right now, the pictures of the peacock, the dog, the cat and the salt shaker and that, they were created by text. So someone literally wrote in peacock and a computer has actually generated that picture. It's not, sometimes it can be through just search, it will find a picture of a peacock, but there are networks that actually draw a peacock. If it's that advanced, it understands what a peacock should look like. The top right one is of celebrities. All these faces are fake, they're not real. They are being created by a machine with sometimes specific data. For example, I would like a female celebrity of this age with brown hair, and it will create one for you, looking like celebrities' photos that they generally look like. And to give you an idea of how far we've come, the bottom right is an example of 2014, what they look like. Pretty blurry, 2017 today, pretty advanced now. You can't kind of find the difference, see the difference. Another way that you can use machine learning is image-to-image translation. So you can take one image, pair it with an influencer image and output a brand new one. So here, for example, we're taking a daytime image, mixing it with a nighttime one, and it creates a blend of the two, which there's so many applications of the GAN networks. So you can change satellite photographs to Google Maps, photos from day to night, black and white to color. There's a lot of work in upscaling old footage to HD at the moment that's happening. It's also been productized. So there are, you may have seen on Instagram and on social networks over the past few years, a few synthetic models or artificial talent pop up. So this lady on the left-hand side, she's actually created through an AI. She's not real. And a lot of the time people thought she was. There's also a company called Artificial Talent who are actually creating models for brands to use in their shoots. even actually like circumnavigating shoots, no longer having to order or book out studios and talent. You can actually decide what your model looks like in a digital kind of way, and then just put your product on it. And that's incredible, because it means that there's a huge cost saving around not having to pay for talent and studio time, and you can reuse these talents. You can actually create your own models that's specific to your brand. So you could create a whole suite of models that look like your brand. I'm not sure how that would look in my head, but it's a potential. It's the kind of thing you can do. And you can also do generated art. So Nutella, for example, are using machine learning to generate brand new art that's never been seen before. This art on the bottles are actually created by just data and consumer behavior and thoughts and context. And the machine just interprets that and turns that into actual kind of art pieces. And not only art is being produced, but actual new products. So this is a whiskey that was produced through machine learning, whereby a company called Magmire took a load of data around consumer behavior, interests, tastes, award-winning whiskies, and then actually created a whiskey out of that information, which is super interesting and super kind of exciting. So, excuse me. So the benefits of kind of machine learning and natural language processing, so really understanding what people are saying and the context, and then being able to make new art and new content around that, are pretty large. So for example, the savings, the cost is a big one. To give you an example, that company Artificial Talent, who create digital models for brands to put their clothes on, they're saving costs of hiring talent and models, hiring studio time, camera and hardware and equipment, trying to arrange all those working parts on a particular day, having to manage weather or kind of environmental changes. That's a huge cost for a shoot. But if you can actually take that and do that digitally with pretty much photorealistic people, that's enormous. And the flexibility behind it as well is you can reuse those models really quickly, tweak them, change them quite subtly and simply, relay brand new products over the top of them. You have exclusivity to them as well. So there's no more sharing of that kind of really famous model if you don't want to. You don't have to wait for that person to be available anymore. It's huge.
Please, what was the name of that company that you mentioned? Was it Artificial Talent?
Artificialtalent.co, I believe, is the website. It's on one of the slides, so I can share that.
Question come through, which you partly answered, but I think that would be helpful. Thank
you. Cool. Excuse me. So content's huge. Content's really important, but it's even more important when we actually understand the context of what people are saying, and we feed that into the content we're creating for our consumers and via the brands. But it's important to make sure that content's available. So we're going to move into our next section now, which is about surfacing that content, namely through social. So social is going to be huge in 2020. It's already huge as it is, but we're seeing huge changes in the way people are actually using social. Rather than just being a platform to share content on, they're actually using social as part of their purchase path, so through e-commerce particularly. But I want to talk to you about how we can use that to surface the content more so. Here's some just examples and data around commerce and social at this point in time. So for example, 87% of e-commerce shoppers believe social media helps them make a shopping decision at this point, or 1 in 4 businesses owners are selling through Facebook. And we're seeing definite trends kind of rocket at this point towards social, and especially kind of sharing and e-commerce. So there was a study recently by Value Walk where they found out that 63% of customers expect companies to offer support via social media, and 35% of customers prefer it to other channels. So there is a big demand by customers, and they're becoming so much more used to actually using social as a way to get support from a brand, but also find out more about a brand. And something that which was pretty cool a few years ago was the Nike Air Jordan case study. This was a social campaign whereby the Nike paired with Snap to create a location-aware activation. So you would take your phone to this special event where you'd hold it up over a basketball court, and it would overlay the famous Michael Jordan leap or Air Jordan leap on your phone in augmented reality. But he was wearing a brand new set of sneakers that Tinker Hatfield had just designed. It was I think it was a recreation. And you were able to go in and purchase that through the app, which was amazing. And the kind of conversions we saw on that was incredible. We saw 5.8 million unique users, 4 times the normal user engagement, and 23 minutes only to sell out of all of them. And we actually delivered those sneakers within 2 hours using a new platform, well, not a new platform, but a logistics partner called Dark Store, who specialize in turning around delivery very quickly. Snap is obviously a huge platform for brands, particularly around augmented reality. So we're seeing a huge kind of changing consumers' engagement. They're doing more and more with AR experiences and sharing their discoveries. So that's a really key part, is what consumers are actually sharing. We're turning them somewhat into just fans, into more salespeople. If they're able to share your content, they're kind of selling the product for you. And Snap are doing loads to kind of help that. So Snap have ultimately released most of the functionality that was used for the Air Jordan campaign to consumers. So they have Face Lens, which most people are familiar with, but the World Lens, whereby you can actually place a 3D object in the real world. And you can mix face and world together, so you can have really interesting lenses, they're called. A few others are landmarks. So Snap can actually detect famous landmarks, and brands can overlay kind of really cool items on top of that. Portal is where you get translocated to or transferred to a brand new environment, a 3D environment or another place in the world. And marker lens, which is where you can actually detect markers in the real world. So in this case, it's LeBron James on a poster for Nike. And you can also do segmentation in Snap now. You can find the sky and the ground to do some really cool lenses. But that generative context or content we were talking about, you can actually do in Snap. So you can have Snap's filters respond to the context that we've discovered. So for example, in Snap, if you took a video of a maths equation, natural language processing will take that and understand the context that it's maths, it's written, and it will respond to it accordingly. And you can do that with products. For example, up the top there, we've got Purell. Snap can detect a product and overlay maybe more contextual information for that product. And there's other social platforms doing things down in their own roadmaps. For example, Instagram have recently started trialing something called Drops, which is awesome. It's super exciting. The idea that if you know a super hot, hype, cool product is coming from the likes of Nike, Adidas, or Supreme, you can actually say, I would like to get a notification as soon as this thing drops. No more kind of checking in and out backwards and forwards. You can actually sign up to a notification. They will say, hey, this is going to drop in 15 minutes. Get ready to buy, which is awesome for kind of people who are massive, massive fans. Another one is the Instagram checkout. So being able to purchase things directly in Instagram, no longer bouncing them off to another website. And Seth Godin, who's an entrepreneur, he said a while ago that you can use social media to turn strangers into friends and friends into customers and customers into salespeople, which I've already kind of mentioned. That the idea, if your content is really good and rich and contextual, people want to share it, and that's selling your product. And a really cool one is in social as well, is try before you buy. And this really works to that point about you create really good content and contextual content, people will share it. So here we've got people trying on new products, so glasses here or trainers. that they can then share to their friends and get opinions on. And this is all within social platforms. This is no download required other than the original app, which most people probably already have. So social is very quickly becoming the platform for an adaptive way of commerce. No longer is it your standard bricks and mortar. It's now commerce in social, which is awesome. So moving on to the next topic, we've got how do we convert them online? So we've spoken to them about context. We've kind of got them into social. We're talking to the consumers about kind of the brand and the product through social. But then we want to talk to them online as well. That's the kind of the mainstay of how people kind of interact with, learn about products and purchase. But because today there's an ever shifting demand in kind of what is key, what's hot, new technologies, new platforms, it's very hard for brands to future-proof themselves on the online medium. So how do you take that kind of discovery flexibility from social and take that online to a traditional website? So Steve Jobs quoted, you've got to start with the customer experience and work back towards the technology. And I'm a big advocate of that. You need to start with the experience. And to get a big experience, a really good experience, you've got to be positioned in the way that you can flex. So one technology that brands can use is what's called microservices. And that's just the way to build websites rather than building a big traditional, what we call monolithic website, which is everything basically in a bucket as well as the kitchen sink. You would build components all separate. So you can very quickly bring in new components when you need to. So for example, things like virtual reality or voice or audio or artificial intelligence, machine learning. So the benefit of it is the big monolithic stacks are typically quite expensive, complex, rigid, and slow to move or change. By building using microservices in a lean way, you can actually adopt things a lot quicker. So this isn't actually my graph. I pillaged this from ThoughtWorks, which are a really good company who do publications about technology each year. And this is a good way to understand the lean methodology. So traditional monolithic approaches are very slow to change, very hard to change, very costly to change, whereas more of a lean process can adopt very quickly. So you can see via this graph how quickly tech is actually coming into play and what's available over time. And it ultimately really fuels digital transformation. So here's a very simple graph to kind of suggest that a radical lean approach means that you can do things in segments. You can understand what's really valuable, first of all, and do it in stages, as opposed to investing in a big bang approach where you have to do everything from CRM to data analytics, e-commerce, chatbots all together, which can be expensive. You can maybe just focus on a CMS and a basket to begin with, and then build as you need to. And we've seen good success in the industry that you can typically save up to 60% over 3 years on cost by having a very lean and smart approach to technology. And to give you a real visual of how a lean methodology would look is, I know this may be a bit complicated initially, it's just the separation of things. So at the very top, you have the interfaces, so web, a mobile website, maybe a chatbot, voice, and Internet of Things. Below are all the other working parts that make up a digital asset or a website. But what we're going to be focusing on now is actually chat. Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Google, mentioned in the long run, I think we're evolving to computing from a mobile first to an AI first world. And chat is obviously very prevalent there. Intelligent kind of self-service tools in websites is super important. People are becoming a lot more demanding in what they can do on a website, and they want it now, they want it quick and instant. So rather than going through a traditional form that you would fill in to get access to information, you can now use things like chatbot. And I've given you an example there, Dialogflow. That's a platform by Google that you can very easily create your own chatbots in. But it's super important to understand that customers are wanting more on-demand and self-service modules and functionality. So it's kind of key that we start thinking about things like chat, because it's one thing that you can use to kind of triage or talk to consumers online via. And another platform that you can actually use is reply.ai. So this is more about chatbots as well, like Dialogflow. But the benefit of the chatbot tools today is that you can create a single chatbot and then deploy it to multiple places. So you can deploy it to your website, you can deploy it to Facebook like we have here, or you can deploy it to more social platforms. It's becoming really powerful. But not only can chatbots be automated, they can be run by AI, of course, but you can also have what's called cobots now. The idea that a piece of AI will do the initial triage, but once it reaches to a point where the chatbot's no longer to give context or information, they can pass it to a real person. So it's kind of saving brands time and money in terms of just understanding what a customer's needing and getting to the more important part kind of a lot quicker and more efficiently. So it's more about, as I say, self-service and real-time support online. So it helps solve customers' problems quickly, it reduces response time, it increases conversions, and it's super convenient for customers as well. And ultimately, the big outcome of this, it boosts customer engagement and satisfaction. So absolutely, interactions online can better predict future demand. So while people are engaging with online brands, websites and things, we can track that, we can understand that, because we already know that using natural language processing, we can understand what they're thinking and feeling through context, using machine learning. So that kind of takes us into our next topic, which is about in-store. So how can we take those learnings and change the in-store experience to become this elevated kind of, sorry, Prue, were you gonna? Nope,
I was just going to say, I was going to give you a time check. So yeah, we've got 20 minutes to go, Ciaran, and I just want to make sure I've got a bit of time for Q&A at the end. So just giving you a time check.
Yeah, no worries. These are shorter, these ones. So yeah, how can we take that information that people, we found from people's working or behaviors through social and online to the in-store experience? The brick and mortar experience is kind of struggling at this point in time. People are doing so much more of their purchasing through social or online. How can we design the future shopping experience that customers really will value? So brands ultimately that innovate that space will thrive. And we've seen the likes of Nike and Amazon already experiment in that place with their smart stores. So for example, Foya are a company that are specializing in digital display that kind of integrates with point of sale systems. So you can actually create your own displays that allow people to do their own purchasing rather than going through a lengthy queue or waiting for an advisor. You can create your own point of sale, like Amazon have done in their smart stores. The idea that you can walk into one of their stores, pick up the products, walk out. No interaction really required. And Nike did a similar thing. But it's ultimately about enabling the client in your store to kind of complete their own transaction, either through these smart displays or mobile. And there's also elevating the experience. So going back to Snap, an example would be you can pick up markers within stores and overlay your product in a digital space. This means you can maybe edit the product in live. So Nike has its platform where you can change the colors of the trainers. You can't really do that in store unless you go to one of their terminals. But if you can use your own phone to do that, it elevates the experience. Another company would be Oak Labs. They're again taking that digital display a level higher, where you can interact with the screen, order things to your changing room, inquire about new sizes and things, all without having to interact with someone. I know that sounds really kind of inhuman, but I think it's quite prevalent at this point in time with kind of social distancing. And Percolator as well is another company that deals in things like computer vision to understand what people are feeling in your stores. So we can use cameras to actually understand how people are feeling, understand demographics, what they're doing within the stores, what they're saying. Sounds a bit tracking, but it's a lot more kind of insightful in that we can understand where the kind of bottlenecks are in a store. We can faster get people through as I say, the point of purchase. And just to kind of support the idea that stores need to become smarter, Boston Retail Partners recently cited the fact that retailers plan, or 55% of retailers plan to fully implement AI in their daily operations within the next 3 years, which is huge. And some more examples, Footmarks does wayfinding. So the idea that you can find out where people go in within your store so you can better place products, or you can make the layout a lot more efficient. And Clarify, you can understand using computer vision what your demographics are, where your product should be placed in accordance with that. And Perch as well worked with Nike and Yamazaki Whiskey to make really interactive displays. So that's just another company, I'll whiz through that one. And Listener are really interesting. So this is a company that specializes in sending ultrasonic sound to devices and listening devices to give instructions. So you could be in a store and your device could pick up on one of these signals and show you a product or something really interesting or contextual to that store. But yeah, stores are great, and we are changing them. They are becoming smarter with AI and machine learning and contextual learning, but they're great for the now. But what about when people are actually outside, when they've gone home, or they're kind of no longer at the store? So then that leads us to the next topic, which is at home. And it's all about continuing the commitment. Brands need to make sure they're still talking to customers from the content they create, where they post it on social, where they surface it in a store, and then also at home, when the person's at home. Connectivity is key. I'm just going to skip because of time. So voice is a big one. Voice design is going to be huge in the next couple of years. It's already started to build a discipline, but understanding how to really design for voice interaction across things like Google Assistant or Alexa or Siri. I think we're all getting very familiar with these devices, but we really need to crack how we design those interactions. And Google's doing a really fantastic job at it. For example, Google recently paired with Argos, which is a UK brand, to allow people to find out about products and stock availability at their local store, and potentially purchase it all through voice without having to leave their home or jump online. They can do it just with something that's so human, which is voice. And then another thing in the home is wearables and augmented humans. The idea that people are becoming so much more connected to the devices. They're using health trackers, smart watches, and also there's a patent there for Apple's new smart glasses. How do brands start to think about their positioning on these devices, their applications they're building for them, or how they present or design their own brands around these new UIs or ways people are exploring? So yeah, we've got a few minutes left. I'm just going to wrap it up in a couple of slides for you. I appreciate that was a bit of a whirlwind, but these last few slides should kind of quantify what I was trying to get across. So again, there's 5 stages ultimately in what I think is a continued experience. There's the first, understanding the content, using things like machine learning, NLPs, and GANs. So first of all, understand what people are saying. You've got to understand what your consumers are saying about your brand to you, how they're feeling. And then also creating really exciting new content, saving massive costs by using machine learning and AI to create digital assets that you can reuse again and again. Social, understanding how to use social and the new features that are coming. So making sure that your followers are actually your salespeople. They've got really exciting content that you're creating through contextual content, and they're sharing it through filters, and then they're able to actually purchase those products using drops. They know about a brand new drop that's coming from your brand in 6 months' time. It's super excited. And discovery, fueling discovery through social. To online, making sure that your online experience is always on, and using things like chatbots to allow that continual conversation online without feeling you having to wait for weeks to hear back from a brand. And services, so people can actually service themselves. We're seeing huge changes in banking, whereby banking and financial companies are having to really step up, because people are expecting to be able to go on and change different aspects of their accounts and things immediately, no longer going into the bank. And then following that into in-store, funnily enough, bricks and mortar, really personalizing the store, not making it just a broad kind of display for everybody, personalizing it, understanding where people are walking in stores, giving them the tools to actually explore your products and purchase them on their own. And then finally, at home, continuing that conversation, making sure brands appear on these new connected devices. They're appearing in voice, they work with voice and voice search. So there was 5 kind of important technologies in there. And again, I appreciate it was a bit of a whirlwind for some of the tech, which is, it can be quite heavy, but NLPs are a big one to automate the creation of content. It's going to be huge, being able to dynamically create content without the costs of studio time, etc. GANs or GANs for new content based on that kind of context that we discovered. Social e-commerce and checkout, online services and chatbots, facial detection and wayfinding in stores, voice search and connected home. And then there's some key learnings there as well, which I won't go through. But the idea is, I think the real big takeaway is we've got to do a better job of understanding what people are saying around brands and what consumers are feeling, so we can better deliver more contextual and specific or targeted content towards them, while saving costs, because it's all automated and it's all dynamic. It's no longer a manual task. And then we make sure we build our platforms in a real lean way that we can quickly adopt to new technologies as they come. And we also build the tools that people need so they can do things when they want to. And just very quickly, some other interesting developments. I completely kind of admit to the ones I've covered and not kind of everything. Some of the massive ones are virtual, which I'm sure everybody's aware of: virtual reality, augmented, mixed reality, things like big data, blockchain, and stuff. But I'll share this deck, no doubt, so you can have a little look, and I'll give some references. So yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I overrun by 5 minutes, but thank you for your time. Hopefully you found that insightful, and you found some bits in there that maybe will help you talk to brands more about what they should be doing in technology in 2020.
Ciaran, you absolutely didn't run over time, and you have just blown my mind, and I'm sure, and in fact I know several of the participants. I've received a couple of text messages in the middle of this session, and I've just seen someone put in the Q&A saying, I don't have a question, I just want to say what an amazing presentation this was. So thank you so much. It was so exciting for me to watch, and I know many of our attendees today. I feel like I've come out of the back of this with at least half a dozen new businesses and terms that I need to go and Google and research myself. And for that reason, if you don't mind, we will definitely take a copy of your deck and share it with the participants today, just so that they've got the opportunity to go and follow up some of those things that you've kind of raised our consciousness over today. If you don't mind, we might just go through a few questions for the next sort of 10 minutes or so, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And one that's come through from a couple of people is, how do you stay on top of what's happening here? Obviously, you're at the forefront of things that, the vast majority of people, a lot of us talk to, will never even have heard of before. So, give us the top 3 websites, blogs, pages, publications that you follow to stay on top of this kind of technology.
That's that's actually quite cool, actually. It's one of the questions I always ask to kind of people who I'm interviewing. I love to find out about new sources. So first of all, I would say RGAs, this doesn't help anybody, but RGA is great for that. That's one of the benefits of RGAs and working in an agency that's so collaborative. Use your network, first of all. Talk to your colleagues, because you'll find that people have some really interesting kind of interests, for lack of a better word. We've got people who maybe are based in finance, but have a real passion around kind of data. But sorry, to kind of give you more kind of specific answers, ThoughtWorks is a really good one around technology. It maybe is a bit heavy, but it will talk about really cool stuff coming. I would say, can I actually follow up with an email? My memory is terrible for things like email lists, but I actually subscribe. There's a few email lists that talk about virtual reality, artificial intelligence. So I'm more than happy to share them. But I would maybe summarize by saying there's publications and email lists that you can find online, which that's where I generally get a lot of my information beyond just talking to colleagues and like-minded.
I think that's fantastic. And if you wouldn't mind sending through a list, I think we can certainly send that out to all of our participants as well as a bit of a follow-up. I guess to sort of follow up from that question and sort of understanding how fast technology moves, it's sort of these days, I think you can go and study something like this at university, and by the time you finish your course, the technology is outdated. So if someone's really passionate about moving into this real technical space or innovation space, how did you sort of find yourself there? Is it, is it because of what you studied? Is it because of the connections that you've made? Is it because of the jobs that you took? Or how do you move into this innovation space?
Again, that's really good, actually. There's loads of sources online, self-learning sources. For example, lynda.com's one, which you can use to go on and find any information about any topic. And they will come with things like workshops and tests, and some of them are actually really fun to do. You can do coding online. So I would say that's one avenue you can look at, is online learning. There's a few platforms. Again, I'll make a list of these things and I'll happily share all that. Another one is going to kind of startups or open days. So in Sydney, if you're based in Sydney, and there are some in Melbourne, but there's different kind of events that you can go to and just learn. Facebook, Google, all the big kind of companies run these open days for free, like Atlassian does them as well, where you can go along and just meet really interesting people and they talk about these new platforms as they come along. So yeah, again, it's a bit of a rubbish answer, but I will share some sources where you can go and find out about these things. I would say the online training, though, that's how I got into it. I saw I was doing creative. I wanted to know how to animate my creative. Did a Google, found an online kind of workshop, went through the code and the tests, and that's how I started playing, especially with physical hardware as well. Things like Arduino or Raspberry Pi. They're microcomputing platforms, super cheap, $30. You can buy a Raspberry Pi and you can start building stuff with.
Cool, I've heard about this. I didn't really know what it meant. Look, another question has just come through that I think is actually really interesting, because I think when a lot of people start hearing this language being spoken, and I have to say we probably have the same thing with finance, people either think they're a digital type person or they don't. They think they're a finance type person or they don't. Yeah. And I wonder if perhaps there's a perception that to work in the area that you're working in, you have to be some Elon Musk type genius. And I'm not saying you're not, of course, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm just wondering, how accessible is it to get into this? How smart do you have to be? What are the most important attributes of someone who's working in technology and innovation at the moment in our industry?
I would say, I can't think of the word. It's essentially just the ambition to want to figure things out, to understand. You absolutely don't have to be a genius. I would say it's more about kind of knowing where to look and knowing who to talk to. I'm no expert on a lot of this stuff I've gone through. I understand it and I can talk about it, but the real nuts and bolts, even I would be lost. So I would always reach out to an expert. For example, in machine learning, it would be a data scientist or a data engineer. They're the people who have got the real smarts. But I would say, just to kind of get into this world, there's two things I would say. Is that kind of ambition to kind of figure things out and just discover. So just Google is a huge tool. The internet's enormous and amazing for just finding a wealth of information. It's inquisitive, sorry, that's what I was trying to find. Being inquisitive about how things work. And then secondly, being collaborative and sharing. So developers by trade generally are really sharing. You'll find that all this stuff I've shown you, the code behind it is probably free to use and online. You can download it and run it. So that's another trait of developers generally is really wanting to collaborate and work together. So if you find a platform that you really like, generally you can reach out to the developers and start chatting to them.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question.
It absolutely answers it. And something I might also just add from my own experience is that, you know, every single element of what we do is about connecting with consumers. And so, you know, if you are someone who's got a really great insight into human behavior and the way that humans behave, that does mean that you may well be really great at technology. Technology enables natural human behaviors. So if you've got a great psychology understanding, if you've got a great understanding of the way people want to behave, you know, consider yourself someone that has an opportunity in this area. Don't feel intimidated or perhaps that you don't belong because you come from a more human side of things. Look, there's a couple of other quick hit questions here. Someone asked me, what's your thoughts on TikTok advertising? Do you have any sort of a single sentence response on that one?
My partner's recently got into that and is continually kind of saying, have you seen my TikTok? Have you seen my TikTok? I would admit to not being on TikTok. My thoughts around it though is vertical video is huge. It is obviously becoming, it's even more of a conversational piece now, as opposed to just a sharing platform. People are actually using have been using things like Snap for a while to actually have conversations through video. I think it's a fine platform. It's obviously getting momentum and people are enjoying it. So yeah, we haven't really done much with TikTok actually recently ourselves. But.
When I say isolation, turned myself into a bit of a TikTok addict.
Yeah. So. I would just very quickly say on that previous question though as well, my details are up on the screen. So if anybody feel free to give me an email. I'm happy to kind of help out any way I can with those questions.
Ciaran, look, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and so I will kind of wrap this up now. I just, I already know from the feedback I've received already that this has just been an exceptional session. So thank you so much, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if you received some emails or LinkedIn requests. Look, everyone, thank you so much for attending. As always, it's really always so heartwarming to see the numbers, you know, arriving at the session and then staying until the end of the session. I hope you're continuing to get a lot out of it. We're focusing on our final official week next week, which is the production week with Alex Hay from Rabbit Content, which is going to be really exciting. And look, as we mentioned, we will send out a follow-up to Ciaran's brilliant presentation today, because I certainly haven't been able to absorb it all within 1 hour, and I'm keen to get stuck into it again. So please continue filling out those surveys, guys. We respond to them, they make a huge difference, and they really are shaping what this course is. So we'll send out another one. Look forward to hearing your thoughts, but have a fantastic week, and we will see you again next Thursday. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Take care.